guys, welcome back to the Sanditon Chronicles. I'm your host Maureen, and we are joined again with Janice, who is now my friend since doing all the Sanditon stuff, and who is a regular co-host with me. So we are excited today to be talking about Tom Parker. Now,
yes,
as I said at the end of last week's, I know that some of our fandom are not fans of Tom Parker, and some are. Now, I did a couple weeks ago, I did the Tom and Sydney relationship. And there was two people who reached out to me and said, you made me actually like Tom. I didn't before. And then there was like three other people were like, not me. I still hate him.
Well, they can just not listen to this.
No, they got to listen to it, but it'll give them a different perspective.
Okay.
On who Tom is. So we've talked about this before, about how I love how Chris Marshall has done Tom. I think he did a fantastic job. But I actually am endeared to Tom. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just because he seems so sad and despondent at times when he's actually pretending to be like this manic, erratic guy. But I really like Tom.
Well, he's very passionate,
mm-hmm.
and he obviously really loves his family. And how can you hate somebody who loves his family? I mean,
mm-hmm.
That's always a plus in my book.
Yeah.
But, he, as his wife, the character who played his wife said, he has two wives, the first one being her and the second one being Sanditon.
I forgot she said that.
Yeah. And it's pretty true. And actually it says that right in, those are Jane Austen's words.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She said that in the first chapter. I was going back and reading the first it's the second chapter, but this first part, and it says that he had two wives, or that his second wife, that he was evidently, this is what it says, upon the whole, Mr. Parker was evidently an amiable family man, fond of wife, children, brothers and sisters, and generally kind-hearted, liberal, gentlemanlike, easy to please, a sanguine turn of mind, with more imagination than judgment. And then it talks about Mrs. Parker, and then later on it says Sanditon was a second wife.
I think I mean, obviously it's Jane Austen's word, so it's going to be a good description, but I think that's pretty matching. I think they wrote him pretty much matching that. Because if you look at how he is with Babington and Crow and Edward and Esther, and he doesn't dislike anybody.
No.
I don't even think he truly dislikes Lady Denham.
I don't either. He's just worried all the time that she's going to take her money out, and he's worried about making her happy.
Yeah,
that's the whole thing, And
he does say at one point, "Oh, she is a miserable old woman."
Yeah.
But that's not an inaccurate statement either.
No. He's just making an observation at that point.
Yeah, it's not even that he dislikes her, because when she's up, I mean, Tom feeds off of that energy, and I think that's one thing about Tom's personality, is that he feeds off the energy of the people around him.
Yes, he does. And when I think about Tom, I think of him as a showman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love that scene in the 7th episode, which we haven't really discussed yet, but where he is announcing the race that's about to take place and twirling his cane, or whatever they call those things. But anyway, yeah, I mean, he's definitely, and how much he promotes. And then also when he starts the balls, and he introduces, especially the first ball, but all of them, the two that they had in Sanditon. He's a showman.
I think showman is a really good way to describe Tom. I like that, because I picture, as soon as you started talking about episode 7, I pictured him on the edge of the boat, or on the edge of the river, with his megaphone and his twirling walking stick.
Yeah.
And in every Midsummer Ball, his arms always fly wide. Welcome to the Midsummer Ball. And he has this way of enunciating these words and carrying them out, and really, like, he does feed off of people's energy, in that when someone is like Lady Denham, when she's angry, Tom is really freaked out. When she's happy, Tom is really excited. So he feeds off it, but he just takes it to the next, like, 5 levels above that, whatever direction.
Yeah, you're right. And then, when he's so worried, he worries too much,
Yeah.
And you've made the point on many times that he's worrying when he should be doing things.
Yeah.
And especially like when he goes to talk to to Sydney in the bar and basically wants to just talk to Sydney and not talk to Crow and Babington. That scene, I just want to choke him, because it's like, you are counterproductive. If you spend some time getting to know these people, then you could win them over more, whereas you're dismissing them.
Yeah, I mean, your moneymakers are right there.
They're very gracious about it, but it's not the right approach.
And
I
get that he's relying on Sydney's expertise, but he's trying to force Sydney to do it how he would do it. And Sydney's going to say they can't be forced into doing something they don't want to do. They have to be corralled. They have to be cajoled into it. They want entertainment. But Tom could have taken that information and gone to Crow and Babington asking questions. What do you think of Sanditon? How do you like Sanditon? What could I do to get you to stay? I mean, he could have, even asking questions could have been enough.
Right. What else would you like to see here for entertainment? Yeah. He is so good in some ways and his own worst enemy in others.
Yeah. And I think part of why he didn't ask them was because, I mean, every time he tried to do something else other than work on the building of the town, Lady Den was like, I don't know what you're doing that for. We have all of this stuff. And so I think he's always got that worry in the top of his mind that I can't make the money angry. I can't upset her. I have to do what she wants to do, but I have to do this too. But I mean, you look at him in his house, that scene, it was in episode might have been 1. No, it was 2, when he's looking around his office for something. And Charlotte says, well, I can help.
Right.
I mean, what has he been doing in there that whole time?
Yeah.
He could have even been going over invoices and looking at things and doing it from that perspective, from an accounting perspective, rather than just, I don't even know. I can't even explain what he was doing.
But obviously that's the piece he is not good at. The details, the, calm organization, which is why Charlotte was so good for him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good that she was there.
And I think that carried over into the people.
Oh, absolutely. And do you think for a minute that he could have pulled off the regatta without her? No.
Well, I mean, I wonder how much work Charlotte did, because it was Charlotte's idea, but I think Tom made it what it was. Charlotte might have organized it, and I still think there's no way he would have done it without Charlotte, because Charlotte is the organized. She is the logistics. Tom is the idea man. And I think that
this was her idea, but he glommed onto it. That's true.
I think that he made it bigger, because that's what Tom's really good at, making things bigger, more extreme, more extravagant, more exciting. I mean, that's why he went to debt so fast. Right. So it's not always a great trait. But when it comes to entertaining the masses, and when it comes to promoting the town, that's his strength. That's his strong suit. So he should have been doing that with Babington and Crow. He should have been doing that even with Sydney, because Sydney kind of comes to this town as like, yeah, I don't really want to be here. I'm just here because you asked me to. Like, sell Sydney on it.
Right.
Make him love this town.
Right. I mean, he is a visionary. But it's like, visionaries need those people to come alongside that are actually going to do the work.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a part he wasn't great at. And, as long as there was an idea involved, he was on board. But I do think that from the little bit we pick up, that she's pretty involved. I mean, yes, because they're talking about the schedule, remember?
Yep.
And she obviously, and she's the one who says, I'm going to go make sure the starting area is ready. So she was definitely handling the details. I don't think she planned the whole thing without him. I think they were totally involved in that.
Yeah.
But to stay on course and get it to happen,
that was all Charlotte.
She was the event planner, as it were.
Yeah. He was the one saying, I want to see this done. I want this thing. I want this thing. I want this thing. He like kind of drove her down the path. Like, this is the end result I want. You do all the middle stuff.
Right. But not spoken that well, but yeah. or plainly. But
he is very kind-hearted too. And you can see that when they offer Charlotte to come with him, like he was he just wanted any of them to come. And it was part of it was, I want to promote the town. I want you to fall in love with this town that I'm building. But I think the other aspect is you don't have an opportunity. I'd like to give you an opportunity. And I think that altruistic.
And he's a very generous person, I mean, and he was very welcoming.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just played that wrong with Babington and Crow.
I agree with that completely.
That was just not, and then in the process upset Sydney. I mean, to the point that he went to the coves and took a swim.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the constant badgering that Sydney goes under from Tom. And I think part of it is that maybe Tom feels that, well, I can do this with Sydney, and Sydney's the one who I have to do this to because, and I don't think it was ever Tom thinking Sydney owes me, but there was that underlying factor that he did for Sydney. So Sydney should be willing to do for him. He didn't have like, there's sometimes when I felt like if I'm going to ask someone to do me a favor, I have to do something for them.
Right.
Like, I feel like whenever I ask for help or I ask for a favor, it can't be empty handed. I've got to say, well, hey, can you watch my kids for me? And then I'll do this for you. That's always how I operate. And I think that's kind of a little bit how Tom operates too, where he didn't have that with Babington and Crow. He didn't get anything he could really offer them because he wanted something from them. But I think, he thought Sanditon Town was great because Tom loves that town.
Right.
But he's got Sydney saying there's not enough for them here.
Right. Yeah, no, that's right. And the other thing about the regatta is obviously it ended up being Charlotte's relationship, however quick, with Susan that brought most of the crowd.
Yep.
Sydney, at least Sydney was trying, even if it was with Eliza, but she also brought people with her.
Yeah.
So they both contributed a lot more than Tom did in terms of the attendance.
Yeah, I don't think Tom really contributed at all to attendance.
Well, only the townspeople, and
but I think they would come to any event that Sanditon is hosting because they're there.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And he contributed into getting the men to participate in the rowing and to be participants.
Yeah.
But in the sand castle competition, and anyway, so it will really be interesting to see how Tom appears to us in the next 2 episodes. What kind of role he plays.
Yeah, and we can talk about 7 and 8 too as we discuss Tom's character. But
yeah,
I hope to see in season 2, I hope to see a Tom who is a little more or a little less exuberant with his purchasing. I know that he wants the best materials because that's one thing he says when he's on the bridge with Stringer or not the bridge, the scaffolding with Stringer and Charlotte is only the finest materials.
Yeah,
that's great. You want that, but you would rather, if you're low on funds, you want it to appear to have only the best materials, but you don't want to pay that price. So I hope that he's gotten one. I hope he gets a permanent assistant, which I assume Charlotte will have some form of hand in that if she'll be in Sanditon. I don't think she could be in Sanditon and not help Tom. But I would like to see him a little more cautious over where and how he spends his money, especially learning from that fire, if nothing else.
Yes, that's right. And I think he will. I mean, I think he will have somebody there making, helping keep an eye on things. For one thing, Sydney, who I'm sure, will, if indeed he has contributed money from his now wife, I'm sure he would have somebody there trying to monitor it.
Even Mary, because Mary knows how to do this stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think her role is the same as what Charlotte's was with her dad. Or at least I think it started off that way.
Yeah, possibly. It's interesting. Jane Austen had her as pretty useless was the word that she used in regards to Mary, in terms of, that she was a good wife and mother, but not much, not much help beyond that.
I need to reread the first 12 chapters of Sanditon. I only read it through twice. It's been a while.
Well, I mean, it was in that chapter I just reread. So
I think though that they wrote Mary a little different.
I agree, because we talked about that when we were talking about her, and even in your conversation with Kate Ashfield, that came out that she was not treated as useless.
Yeah, she was kind of the driving force behind Tom, and Tom was better when he would listen to her. And she doesn't ever say it, but she kind of alludes at one point to, I'm not your wife anymore because you don't share with me. We're not partners. Right. And the way Jane Austen wrote her, it's more like they weren't really partners. She was just a wife and mother.
Right. It was, like she, definitely she was the little woman.
Yeah. And I think that in this, she's a lot more strength to Tom than what Jane Austen had originally intended.
Right. At least her original idea. And who knows, when she did the final draft of it, had she had the opportunity, it might have changed drastically. It's what you start off thinking and what you end up doing are not the same. For most authors. So
I know that she does like that the woman who's been married already is she's been used up. I know that she likes to write at least one woman like that, but then you look at how she wrote in Pride and Prejudice, Aunt Gardner. She wasn't washed up. She was so I think Jane Austen always has a balance of characters in her stories.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think the writers continue to do that. I think they did a good service continuing to have that balance, but I think that they took some characters and they made them different than what Jane Austen had wrote. But they also added in characters that weren't originally in the script that restored that balance, I think.
Yeah.
I think Tom has got a nice balance of character for how, and I think that has a lot more to do because again, we only got 12 chapters of Jane Austen, but I think that has a lot more to do with the writers of Sanditon, the show.
Yes.
Because you see that you don't really start to see the balance in him because he just seems all manic until roughly episode 4, episode 3. And then you start to see another aspect to his character. You start to see a man who's afraid and desperate.
Right. And absolutely. And in the part that was covered by the book is like when he is in Charlotte's home and he's so enthusiastic about Sanditon. Yeah. I love that whole scene though. I love, we were in search of a doctor for Sanditon. Oh, is Sanditon a relative? That's still that line still to this day cracks me up.
I like it when Charlotte Sad is trying to convince him there is no doctor here. No, there's surely there's a doctor here.
Yeah.
He's in the wrong town.
Right.
But even in that, like this man has lived here, Tom. He's been here his whole life. He's aware if there's a doctor or not. Tom couldn't fathom it. Nope, that's not what it is. I'm right. I see right here. Look, I have proof right here.
Yeah. But it is interesting, his character. And I do think that Chris Marshall is just embraces it completely. My favorite scene definitely from that standpoint is the one between after they've had the luncheon at Lady Denham's and she's read him the Riot Act and he goes back and is talking with Charlotte and Mary and telling about the conversation and how upset Lady Denham was with Charlotte and Arthur and how they can hardly stop laughing, because of the absurdity of it,
That's what how he says. Well, she's not too happy with him either.
And just
for pineapple.
Exactly. How disrespectful Arthur was about the pineapple. That's it is really hilarious. The wit and the comedy that was written into this is so good. And I am confident that between Justin Young, not only writing stuff, but overseeing the writing and having Paula review it, that they'll keep all of that in the next 2 series.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm excited to see where it goes, and it'll be fun to see. And I don't know if you noticed or not, but on Twitter, somebody did a little poll about whether people were going to watch episodes 2 and 3, especially the Sidlot group that are just not giving up, don't want to give up. And I wrote, I don't care what anybody says right now. I don't care how mad they are. When those 2 series are broadcast, they will watch them.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I've had several people reach out to me because I've been very vocal about, you can't replace Theo James. He is Sydney Parker. You can't replace him. And going forward, we have returning writers who, I think that because they were so invested in Sidlot, they forget that these are the same writers who made us fall in love with Sydney in the first place.
Absolutely.
They have the same ability to do the same thing for another character and another set, and maybe even make Charlotte better.
Right.
So, there's so many possibilities and so many good things. And the benefit of having returning writers is that they're familiar with the cadence of the original. They're familiar with all the nuances of the actors as well as the characters, and they're going to be able to write that into the scene work.
And also, for these people to act like they're the only ones who cared about this is just crazy. All of us that have accepted it also really cared about it. And it's obvious the writers and everybody else really did want to bring Sydney, Theo back.
Yeah.
But, when people say no, you just have to accept it.
But they kidnap him, hold him at gunpoint.
Exactly. You're going to force him to do it. It's just ridiculous. And you can't blame the man. He's moved on to other things. His head is somewhere else, And
we just put out the thing today of 2 years since it premiered in the UK, or the other day.
Yes.
The other day.
Yeah.
It's been 2 years since it premiered. So that means 2 years since it had been finished and aired. So it's been about 3 years since he worked on this project by now.
At least 2.5. That's right. And it's so, and nobody asks those of us who watch it to change our lives just for the other people, you know. People have to live their lives.
And I think what's forgotten is those of us who've accepted, okay, Theo James said no, there isn't another option, guys. Like he said no, you can't, that's it. That's gotta be the end of the story. I think what they forget is that we still would love for him to come back. We still love the story of Sidlot, but we also understand that he is not only Sydney Parker. He is a human being who has the right to not join something out of obligation or fan demand.
Right.
And that's just what it is. And it's
fans were able to bring the show back, but they cannot control the actors.
Exactly. I'm glad that Chris Marshall is coming back this time. I know there was some controversy with him in a month ago, and I know that.
No, I'm glad he's coming back, and I think he'll be awesome, really.
And honestly, I think that any recast would be a mistake, because I think every character in the show, every actor who plays a character in the show has done it so completely and so well that you can't possibly imagine anyone else in that role.
Well, the only person they've recast is Allison.
Yeah, but she was a
very minor words. Right. Yeah. Did she even say anything?
No. In the book she did, but not in the show.
Yeah, I rewatched that episode just the day before yesterday, and the episode 1, and I remember seeing her, but that is not a big deal. We didn't really get to know that character.
Yeah,
it's been more about people's speculation what that character might do in future seasons.
And that's a more understandable recast, because she was on the screen maybe a total of 5 minutes,
right,
in all 8 episodes.
And she was a local actor who was pretty inexperienced, and who knows if she's even acting right now.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it was like 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, things have changed.
But Chris Marshall.
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. It's easy to talk about because the show's so good. The actors are so good. It's easy to talk about any one of them. But I think that Chris Marshall has, because after I talked with Ollie Blackburn, because he directed the first 3 episodes, and I would really love to interview a writer of the show. Like, if I can get Justin Young on here, year made, that would be awesome. But I think that he was talking about how a lot of it is, and if you have not seen the interview, go back and watch my interview with Ollie Blackburn, because there's a lot of really good insight in there, and Ollie has got some really really, really good gut instincts. And I hope that he at least comes back for a few episodes because he is so good at his job. But he had said at one point, and something he does with the actors is they will finish a scene and they won't yell cut and they won't end it. And he just likes to see what the actors will do in those moments. And they've used a lot of those moments. And I think that's a really good thing with Chris Marshall too. And I think that I don't think that's what happened in my favorite fireplace scene where he's staring into the fire. But I run another podcast, and one thing they had said was you can really tell a good actor by being able to read their emotion and read what's going on in their head and in their eyes. Chris Marshall does that. In that scene in the fireplace, that is my all-time favorite scene. I feel like I haven't talked about it in a while. I suddenly feel very lost that I haven't talked about it in a while. But where he stares despondently, it's a close-up of his face, and his eyes are actually listening. So he's very, very obviously afraid and emotional and despondent. And he jumps right from that into still Tom, like a lesser version of Tom. But then you watch Chris Marshall escalate that character's emotions, and you go on that ride with him. And it's really, really, really well done that you go from despondent staring to the fireplace to in front of Mary saying, "Can't you just see it, Mary?" And all his excitement and all his exuberance. He literally, and it wasn't just like he's sad. Okay, now I'm excited. It was, he took you on that ride through it. He built up to it, and you were able to experience that with Tom.
Right. Yeah. I thought you were talking about when he was staring in the fireplace in London, but no, you mean in Trafalgar
Episode
House.
3. Yeah. Which was actually an Ollie. I got to talk to Ollie about that because that was his episode.
Yeah, that was such a good interview. It'll be interesting. It would be interesting to talk to him again to see his reaction, whether he does any more episodes or not, to see his reaction to where things went.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and he had said, he said that he was sad to not be able to be a part of the other 5 episodes because he only got the first 3. And he kept saying things like, I only got the first 3.
His enthusiasm was just wonderful. I mean,
he's a fun guy. He sent me all, because they did they had this huge like 500-page book thing that they use as the reference for clothing. It was images from back in that time.
Oh, he did send it to
me that. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I'd love to see that.
I'll send you what it was. It was really good. I mean, it was just pictures, but it was so fascinating because they had names above each picture for like their inspiration for each character. It was so interesting. Cool. It was so interesting. And I couldn't believe he actually sent that to me. It's like, wow, you didn't have to do that at all. That's awesome.
Yeah, really, the people working on this show are so generous. And like Liam Hoops, you can tell it's all he can do not to give out more information.
Yes, he's another one I would love to talk to.
Yeah, well, at least at the beginning, he said he was only going to be in the first 3 episodes. So maybe you could get him after that.
Yeah,
he was only working on the first 3, but who knows?
Well, he also, I mean, as a script supervisor, he doesn't actually have to be on Sanditon to do that. But he also is a director. So I wonder if maybe he was just directing some of the first episodes, but still continuing to look at the script. Because Paula Byrne, when I interviewed her, she said she was only on one set one time.
Right.
The whole first
Well, he's in Sanditon right now. Did you see the post on, this is funny, on Twitter, where he took a snapshot of his Twitter description and it says Sanditon all summer. And nobody really pointed it out before he did, these great sleuths that found out everything else. Nobody pointed that out. And I just said, it's because we were so interested in what your post said.
It's true. He kind of cloaked and daggered us.
Yeah, so we'll have to keep an eye on where he says his location is in the future.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm sure he was very good on the Q&A, really good.
Yeah. What other fandom do you have where you have cast and crew who interact so completely with their, like even Jack Fox, he's a main character. He is constantly interacting with the fandom.
Actually, I recently in the last few months, watched The Last Kingdom. Have you seen that?
No, I've heard of it though.
It is definitely more historically accurate than a lot of things you've seen. And those, I've watched many YouTube interviews with the cast and the a lot of the crew. I mean, really interesting interviews.
Mhm.
And they're working on their 5th season right now, and that's the final one. But
Yeah. Well, what I like about this set of people is that it's not just, yes, there's cast members who really interact with the fans, but the people behind the scenes genuinely love to be a part of this fandom. Rob Jarvis was the first person I interviewed for Sanditon. He was also the first person to send out a video message to the fandom for the Sanditon Sisterhood. It was a Christmas video. And
oh
he's
yeah,
always, he wasn't even in every episode. And he was
oh
so excited to be like, yes, I want to help this fandom out. Yes, we'll do this.
well,
And
I agree with you, especially for a show that's only had 1 season. It's
mhm.
astounding
And then you've got
how
Paula and
much.
Liam who are regularly talking to the fandom.
Oh yeah, that's right. And you know, there's somebody who's one of the crew that is doing posts now under an assumed name, because I think they were getting harassed so much, and I suspect it's Justin Young, but I don't know. He may be just too busy to even interact, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And I don't fault anybody who's not interacting. I've just never been a part of something like this where
Right,
so many cast and crew have interacted with us. It's almost like you're seeing a celebrity, you're talking to a celebrity and they're responding to you and they're reading your stuff. And it's a little exciting. And
right,
if you don't want to get involved or you don't have time, that's totally fine. And that's normal. It's
right.
just
That's more
nice to see
expected.
more people do it. And I do know that there's a lot of, like when we did character spotlights for our Facebook page, a lot of these actors are so private that it's hard to find facts on them. It's
Right.
hard to find information on, like Chris Marshall doesn't even have social media. It's his wife who has it. So
So
I
you
mean,
can't blame them when they get attacked
no, not at all.
for any little thing they say, you know.
Mhm.
It's kind of crazy, the stuff that happens.
And I think Theo James had said something about how one of the reasons he doesn't have social media is because he feels like he's an actor trying to portray these characters and actually be these parts. If his fans actually knew who he was as a human being, as Theo James, than as the character, it would be
Right.
hard for him to be so believable in those roles.
Right. They might interfere with the way they view the
Mhm.
character.
And I think there's something to that. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of the cast on Sanditon has that viewpoint. And there's actually a lot of British actors in general who don't do social media.
Yeah.
They just don't.
Yeah.
I
No,
feel like
and
that's more of an American thing. Like Hollywood has
yeah.
to be seen. But I like that about this cast and crew. But
Right.
Chris Marshall is really, I know him. The first thing I ever saw him in was Love Actually. So I've
Right.
been in love with him since that because his character was so funny.
Yeah.
And you get I like that his character in Sanditon isn't overtly funny, right? He's not, no one would say, oh, that Tom, he can cut a rug. He's a funny guy. No one would really say that about Tom, but he still makes you laugh.
Absolutely. And that opening scene where they come up out of the carriage,
yes.
that is priceless. You know, the two, him and Mary, you know,
Yeah.
Kate, it's hilarious. The looks on their faces, it's just hilarious.
And nonverbal's my sweet spot. So all of those expressions, all of those things he does with his face, and even his body language. There's times when he appears hunched over when he's really stressed out. There's times when there's one time when he was talking to Stringer where he actually took a deep breath and he popped his shoulders up and he stood taller. Like, ooh, that's a tell. I like that. And he's really, really good Chris Marshall is really good as Tom in reading the room, so to speak.
Right.
In knowing what actor, not what character, but what actor to feed off of and how he should receive that. And I think it made Tom a really, really complex and interesting character.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree. He's pretty three-dimensional. Actually, the characters in this show, the main characters, the 10 or so main characters, all have pretty well-rounded, they have arcs, they change, they show you more of themselves. Is how I would describe it. In the story, you see more of sides of them than just one side. And talk about humor in that first episode, Lady Denham, oh my goodness, she was incredible.
Annie Reed has made me laugh so much on this show. It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah. I mean, she's amazing. Talk about comic timing.
And everyone on set said that with her. Everyone who talked about Annie Reed said no one can deliver a set down like she can. No one can make a line that's insulting so funny.
Yeah.
Her too, with her expressions.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Back to Chris Marshall. The I don't know if you've seen Lost. What is it called? The television series that Red Planet does that he was in for like 3 or 4 years.
The Death in Paradise.
Death in Paradise. Have you seen it?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I've seen several episodes of it, but not the ones that he was in. But I'm pretty sure I get it on BritBox. I'm gonna have to go back and look at some of the ones he was in.
Mm-hmm. The ones he were in were the only clips I saw of it, because I was looking specifically for it because Chris Marshall was in it.
It's a pretty good series. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
started watching it on PBS, not all the time, but occasionally, without any knowledge of Chris Marshall.
Yeah.
So
I think when I came across it is when we were doing a Chris Marshall, Tom Parker character spotlight in the Facebook group. And then I was looking for videos and I found that. And he's got a lot of really funny scenes in it. There's one in particular where he just falls off a balcony. Like, it tickled me. It made me laugh.
Yeah, it's all, the whole story takes place on an island, and
yeah,
there's always somebody's getting killed. And
yeah. And I wonder if part of the difference we'll see in Tom's character is more ease, because someone in addition to Lady Denham is paying for the town, is financing the workers, is because I'm willing to bet that as Lady Denham continues to give money towards Sanditon, I think that Sydney's money is going to cover obviously the burn down,
the rebuild
building. Yeah. But I think Lady Denham's I think that they're going to, because of how he mismanages funds, I think that the people who are helping to pay for this town are going to work together to ensure that there is only specific funds set aside only for the workers' pay, specific funds set aside only for building materials. And I think they're going to break that down. And I think having that, Tom will have more ease. And I think that he'll still be a showman, because Tom Parker can't. It's impossible for him to not be a showman. But I think that there will be less manic to him. I think that I hope that he'll have a little more ease. I mean, there still has to be some bumps along the road. There still has to be some big catastrophe that happens at some point, because it's how you keep watchers engaged. And it's how Jane Austen writes, is there's always a dip. And so there has to be something, but I hope that overall, because Tom must be exhausted from working so hard to get people to believe that there's no problems.
Yeah.
And working it's a lot of mental energy to do that.
He did seem even more relaxed just being able to talk to his wife, about what was really going on, that he finally had, and also to tell Sydney, to share his burden.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and it'll be really interesting to see. I mean, I get the part about the characters, but it'll be interesting to see how the military part of the new story works. Although we obviously have seen that in Jane Austen before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that where you saw Tom at the most ease was after the regatta, when he's walking with Mary, and he's just so peaceful, because not only did a boatload of people come to Sanditon, but it was people who knew the Prince Regent. It was lords, and it was ladies, and it was wealthy people. All these people who were anybody who's anybody was there.
And he got news at the regatta that Lady Denham had recovered.
Yep.
So he didn't worry that she was going to die. Literally, little did he know that her will called for it to help him, but that will's gone.
I wonder how she'll alter it, because she was pretty angry.
Yeah, it will be really interesting to see what she does, and also Edward and Clara, what happens, since they're all coming back. It'll be interesting to see.
So I think Tom is, honestly, I think Jane Austen said it best. I mean, there was never a doubt that Jane Austen said it best, but she did. I think that he is kind-hearted. And I think part of his mania comes from not just that he didn't have the money, he was afraid, but I think when Fred said, or James said, they've got families, sir, surely you can understand that. I think Tom was really, really, really aware of that. And I think that his guilt over not being able to feed those mouths, and I think that's where a lot of his sadness came from, of they can't feed their kids and that's my fault and I need to make this right. I think that's where a lot of his desperation comes from, because he is that kind-hearted. He does actually care. It doesn't appear that way because he kept working them without paying them.
Yeah.
But there's also, he can't make money if the town isn't built. He can't pay them unless they're making money. So it's a double-edged sword that he didn't have a way out of.
And that is the tragedy in episode 8.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is what happens with Charlotte and Sydney, it's what happened with the town.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that they just were starting to sell, apartments, and things were starting to go well, and then all of a sudden it catches fire. Thank you, Mr. Stringer.
Yeah. I know.
I'm sorry, I can anyway.
That was one of my questions to him is, what do you think would have happened if your character didn't stay up there all night long? It's just, I had to ask it because we all know it would have ended happily right then and there.
Yep. Yeah. Of course, when they wrote it, that they thought they were going to have another episode right away.
Well, isn't it that Andrew Davies wrote it that way because he wanted to ensure there was a second season when there was wind that they might be canceled?
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Yep, that's right.
Thank you for that, Andrew.
Yeah. But whatever.
But I mean, honestly, that's the regular cadence of Jane Austen, though.
It is.
So it
was just a little more extreme.
Well, I don't really know. I mean, Lydia running off with Wickham was pretty extreme.
I know, but that involves just that family, basically. This with Sanditon involved a lot more than that.
Yeah.
It involved a lot of lives. But yeah, you're right.
But I mean, there's always really, really terrible things that destroy a lot of people. But the beauty of Jane Austen's writing is there's always a hero that comes in and fixes the issue, that fixes the problem. And without wanting recognition, without wanting to be the hero, they just step in because it's the right thing.
Well, sure. Like Mr. Darcy, when he very quietly takes care of the problem.
Yeah. And even Colonel Brandon in Sense and Sensibility. I mean,
that's right. You're right.
And that's Sidney Parker. He didn't do this because, oh, sweet, I'm going to be everyone's hero. I mean, he sacrificed basically his livelihood because he doesn't love Eliza. He loves Charlotte, and he sacrifices all that to save this town. So, I mean, even in that, and Tom, I think part of a lot of his fear too is he also had mouths to feed. So it wasn't, I think a lot of people view Tom as innately selfish, and I really don't think that's what he is. I think that he has no money. He's aware he has no money. I think that he is very much aware of how non-existent the money is when he's got 4 kids of his own. All of his workers have family except for James, but even then, when his dad gets injured, James has to feed that family.
Yep.
So, I mean, he's aware of all these mouths that are depending on him, all these literal lives that are depending on him and the money he brings in, and he knows he doesn't have it. And that's why he's pushing Sydney so hard. I mean, when he asked Sydney for money on more than one occasion, he says, just so I can pay my workers.
Right.
It's not to buy more frivolous things. Yes, he did buy his wife that necklace, and that was a mistake. And that was a desperate attempt to prove that everything was okay when he knew it was never going to be okay again.
Right.
And he even says it's a promise. So even in that, he's telling her, this is why I spent money, because it's a promise that it's not always going to be this way. And she didn't understand that because he wasn't telling her. But every time he asked Cindy for money, it was so I can pay my laborers.
Well, and let's face it, I'm sure he bought that necklace on credit.
Exactly. He didn't. There's no way he did, because he didn't have any money to give. There's no way he did. It was a promise, and that was a promise to him too of, I will be able to afford this someday.
Yeah, and he needed to sell those apartments in order to have the money to
Mm-hmm.
do everything.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't see him as a bad guy at all. I mean,
No.
he's just visionaries lots of times stumble. I
Yes.
mean, they just do. It's a fact of life. And
Absolutely.
that's what happened to him. Yeah, he cared, definitely.
Deeply.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I think when you're that kind of a passionate person, all of your emotions are heightened and all of your emotions you feel more, or at least you display them more often. Tom is an extrovert. I mean, Tom is an extreme extrovert. So everything is on his sleeve except for what he doesn't want you to see. Extroverts are really good at hiding behind the other big emotions that they can produce, that they can display. And I think that that's what Tom does.
Yeah. Hide their fears behind the bravado, as it were.
Exactly. Kind of, and that's Tom to a T. He's a man who is desperate and afraid, and he is very much wanting. And honestly, I mean, hiring the people of Sanditon, he didn't hire anyone else to come out. James Stringer wasn't an architect, but he did ask him to do plans. The only reason that Tom said, let's focus on the building of town was because he knew he couldn't afford James to build that pergola.
Right. He was out of money.
Mm-hmm. He asked him to do it because he wanted to give him the opportunity to do it. And you see how he does that. Of course, you know, people can say, well, he didn't pay them. I understand that he didn't pay them, but it's not that he didn't want to pay them. It's not that he wasn't trying to get funds to pay them. Yes, he should have been upfront with them. Listen, I don't have money, but I'm trying to get it. But he also knew that once he told them we don't have money, the work was going to stop.
Right. And I'm sure he did pay them when they came back from London because Cindy provided the money.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, he did. And I think that's why it got done as well as it did.
Yeah.
They were almost finished.
It was finished, really, except for the little thing that Mr. Stringer was doing up there, old Stringer.
Well, I think the main building was finished, but I still think they were working on other buildings in the town.
Maybe, we don't know. They didn't, you know.
And we know that James Stringer is going to stay on until it's done. So that was 9 months was a really fast build because we know Leo Suter's not coming back. So. But we don't know that. I suppose we don't know that.
We assume that to be the case.
He hasn't said anything on social media about it. Maybe he wants it to be a big surprise, but I somehow doubt that. So
he's in that other series, Valhalla.
Yeah, see, now that's the problem with letting ITV for canceling a series too soon, is that all these good actors get recognized and get asked to appear in other things.
Right. And this is why if those people have to be upset at somebody, they need to be upset at ITV, not Red Planet, not anybody who's rescued the show.
Yeah.
But ITV for canceling in the first place. I mean, that's who they should be mad at.
Andrew Davies made it very, very overt plea in episode 8 to not cancel this show.
Right, so to continue. Yeah,
even the writing tried to make sure the show wouldn't be canceled. But.
And I loved when Ollie Blackburn told you, when you ask him, you know, are you Sid Lot or String Lot? And he said, I don't want anything to end. I don't want an ending. I want it to go on and on. So yeah, I hope he does get to direct some more. That would be fun.
I just love Ollie's work. And I would really like to see him back on there. I really hope that he's able to come back. And I think he would probably be amenable to it if his schedule was. So I hope it works out.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be great.
So I think we've talked through Tom's character. And if you want more Tom, we did you can check out our video that is Tom and the relationship of Tom and Sydney. We did a video on the relationship of Tom and Mary. And there's even a little 5-minute blurb that's just Tom Parker that we did. It was after our second episode. It's just I think it's called bonus.
Oh, right.
Tom Parker episode. So there are 3 other videos you can watch if you would like more Tom Parker, or if you just don't understand why Janice and I are pro Tom and you really want to figure it out, go watch those other episodes because they'll explain a lot more about who he is. Because I think a lot of people's issues with him is him and Sydney. I don't think they like how he pushes Sydney to do things he doesn't want to do, but go back and watch that video and we'll explain in depth why.
Right.
That's not what it seems. So if you have anything to say about Tom Parker, I would like to know if your opinion was changed by this on Tom Parker, or if you think that there is no basis for like of him, let us know why. I'd like to have a discussion with you. I had a fan reach out and say that they really we're hoping to find people to chat with. So now's your chance. You can email me at the.sanditonchronicles@gmail.com. You can find us in our Facebook group, which Janice is also a part of. That is the Sanditon Chronicles, Sanditon Family Fan Club. There's a lot of discussions in there. We try to do fun posts. I haven't done my weekly post because I had COVID, so I've skipped that for a couple of weeks, but lots of fun things there. We have over 1,000 members that would love to chat about Sanditon, about how great or not great Tom Parker is. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter is @Sanditon. Instagram is the.sanditon.chronicles. So you can find us on all those avenues. We have our YouTube channel. Check that out. If you're listening, we have a YouTube channel. You can watch the video of this interview. So I think that's it. And next week, I cannot remember what we were talking about next week. Esther. Yay! Esther and Edward. Our first Esther episode. Oh, yay. So if you guys are Esther fans, and if you're not, I'm not sure what you're doing in this world of Sanditon if you don't love Esther. So our first Esther episode is coming up. And I did have someone tell me that they wanted to talk with me about Esther, but I haven't heard from them. So I don't know. So it might be Janice and I again. Who knows?
Yeah. I'm going to be in Kansas.
Oh, so it'll just be me, or it'll be me and this other person.
It might be. Hopefully you'll get your other friend. I mean, I fly back on the 13th. So I'm flying out on the, the 8th.
Okay.
The 7th, the night of the 7th. I'm taking my dad's ashes to finally bury him 2 years later. So I'll be back on the 13th, but I really won't have a chance to do anything between then, the 8th and the 13th. So
no, you should just relax. That's a big thing that you're doing.
So yeah, and maybe that person will contact you again. That would be great.
I reached out to him today to remind them and see if they wanted to. So we'll see. I'm not sure. But next week is Esther and Edward. So tune in for that. Get excited for that, and get ready to give us your feedback. We really like that. So on that note, we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.